Welcome to the very first episode of our podcast series, where we aim to shed light on the world of plastic surgery in the UK. I'm your host, Caroline, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. James Smith, who also happens to be my husband. Mr. Smith is a consultant plastic surgeon working for the NHS at Leeds General Infirmary and privately at Coppergate Clinic in York. In this podcast series, we will be interviewing a range of experts, from skilled surgeons to patients and other specialists, all connected in the field of plastic surgery in the UK. Our goal is to inform and educate you about various aspects of plastic surgery, offering insights from those who know best. In today's episode, Mr. Smith will share his inspiring journey from medical school through rigorous training, leading to his career as a plastic surgeon. He'll talk about his daily responsibilities, the challenges and rewards of his job, and what it truly means to be a plastic surgeon. I hope you find our discussion insightful and interesting. We have many more focused podcasts coming your way, so please stay tuned. Let's dive in and learn more about the fascinating career of Mr. James Smith. Welcome everyone to the podcast. Today we're speaking to James, who's actually my husband. He is a plastic surgeon in Yorkshire, and he's going to tell us all about his career and his job. So can you start by telling us what inspired you to pursue a career in medicine?
Well, honestly, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do when I was at school. I knew that I liked science, biology, chemistry, those kind of things. Really enjoyed watching programs about things like forensic criminology and the psychology and things like that. It was actually the GP who suggested that instead of going into something quite so niche, it would probably be a better idea to go quite broad and go for medicine. So obviously targeted my A-levels and then went on to do medicine. Obviously, before you get into medicine, you've got to get the right A-levels, but you've also got to get work experience, and doing work experience in the hospitals was something that I certainly really enjoyed and kind of knew at that point it was something that I wanted to do. I'd also done quite a lot of jobs in shops. I'd done a couple of bits and pieces in offices, and I certainly knew that those weren't the kind of things that I wanted to do. I like hands-on things, in a way being my own boss, I guess. But medicine was the right career for me.
But you also did art, didn't you? Which
I did do art, yeah.
I think that leads into plastic surgery without you realising.
Yeah,
because
so
you're very creative and arty.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I did. I did do art A-level.
What grade did you get?
I was quite lucky. The school that I went to, it was a nice school down south, and quite lucky that actually they were happy for us to do some other things. So I did economics as well as art. So I did a couple of other things that you wouldn't traditionally put with the sciences. Economics I loved. I thought it was great. Probably is very useful now. Perhaps when it comes up towards tax return time. And then art is something that I always loved, and actually the school kind of embraced it, and certainly when it came towards my university options as well. There were a couple of universities that actually thought quite a lot of it, and it stood out more than the sort of natural biology, chemistry, maths, physics type thing that quite a lot of my contemporaries would have at the time. So certainly at the time, loved art. Wasn't sure if I could ever pursue a career in it, but obviously it fits incredibly nicely now with plastic surgery.
So where did you go to university?
So I went to Leeds University. At the time, I was living down south, and probably wanted to go to London, but wasn't too sure. But thought just as good to spread my wings. Knew quite a lot of people that were up in Leeds. It's a fantastic university. It's a big campus university. So it's a great place to be at uni, and also the medical school has been there for a long time. So it's an established medical degree that as soon as I went up to Leeds was the place for me. Really, really loved it. And actually, we've settled down in Leeds. So I was at uni in Leeds, did a few jobs in Leeds as well. We moved around the country a little bit, but settled down in Leeds, which has been great because a lot of the people that I went to university with still stayed around. It's a very popular place to stay from a family point of view and from a work point of view. So actually, that means that I get to work with people that I was university with and I know very well. You begin those kind of relationships very early on, and certainly that's a good trust relationship when you move on to working in a hospital.
So you've said that you just moved around a little bit. I think you moved around quite a lot. Do you want to tell us about your training and where you trained
Yeah,
and
well, I
how it
know.
all works? For anyone that's like not medical, they probably don't understand how the system works.
Yeah, well, I know you enjoyed it quite a lot. So yeah, I was at University of Leeds. So finished that 2007. And then I did jobs in Leeds General Infirmary to start off with. So I did vascular surgery, upper GI surgery, which is sort of stomach and esophagus, and I did elderly medicine. And then my second jobs, I went to Pinderfields Hospital. I did a bit more general surgery. I did A&E, and I
I've nearly
did
forgotten all this. Yeah.
hospice medicine. Certainly, I've always said that the time in the working in the hospice was one of my most rewarding jobs I'd ever done. It was incredibly emotionally draining, but some of the patients I met and some of the staff I met was incredibly inspiring. But those first 2 years, really pushed me in towards wanting to do surgery at that point. I didn't quite know that I wanted to do plastics because, to be fair, we hadn't actually had that much exposure during my university degree. Quite often, what happens at university is you get allocated into certain firms. And I think I'd had exposure to general surgery and vascular surgery and a bit of urology and things like that, but could never quite work out how anyone would know if they wanted to be an ENT surgeon or an ophthalmologist. Because, for example, ENT, I did one clinic. I think
Yeah.
ophthalmology maybe one clinic. So I'd never had any exposure at all to plastics. So I did those two jobs, and then I moved down south because obviously at the time you were living down in the southwest. So I did what's called your core surgical training. So what essentially happens with your jobs, you get a couple of the sort of house jobs, the early jobs, and then you decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to do medicine, anesthetics, surgery, general practice, something along that line? So I did core surgical training. I did that in North Bristol at Frenchay and Southmead Hospital, and I was
Which you
allocated.
liked. You
I
loved that.
loved, yeah, Bristol was an absolutely lovely place, lovely hospital, incredible people I worked with. I think I did, what did I do? I did general surgery, so I did colorectal surgery,
Yeah, you didn't.
which was great. It wasn't for me, but some of the surgeons I worked with were fantastic. Then I did plastics,
Yeah, you
and
did.
actually that was my first route into plastics, and
Yeah.
the Bristol Plastic Surgery Department is amazing. Met some incredible people, very inspiring people. It's a very busy, big
Yeah.
unit. It's a major trauma centre, it's a burn centre, and there's some lovely people that work down there. But I guess at that time, my first exposure and couldn't quite work out, do I like plastic surgery or do I like the people that I work with?
I think
But
it was
I
both.
Well, it's probably both, yeah. But
Yeah.
we all say the same thing in plastics, and it gets a little bit monotonous when you get up to the interviews. But why do you kind of like it? But it's a very broad spectrum of patients. So on an on-call, you can look after a baby, and then you can have a patient that's 100. It's anatomy all over the place. But I guess from the artistic point of view, there are quite a few surgeons down there. That there was one specifically that's retired now, but that would hand draw all of his operation notes, and they were absolutely beautiful.
Who was that?
And that was Donald Sammett, and he wouldn't really write too much on his operation note, but
I
it was all
remember. Yeah, he
drawing,
did
absolutely
drawing.
stunning.
I do remember that. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so at the
Sorry.
time, I kind of took quite a long time trying to pretend that I was anywhere near the same skill that he was, which
Yes,
was
I do
obviously
remember this.
absolutely ludicrous. So what did I get? So then, for my second
Then,
year, we spoke to the person in charge,
are we
and
still in Bristol here? I've
we're still in
completely lost
Bristol.
track.
Yeah, still in
Right.
Bristol. Still loving being in Bristol.
I did like Bristol, yeah.
Then I did vascular surgery and transplant. So that was a good
Yes, you
job. It
did.
was
Yeah, you like
busy.
that.
Yeah, that was great. That was
How
fantastic.
many years were we there?
3.
Really?
Vascular's got a lot of overlap, because obviously in plastics we look after vessels, we do microvascular repair and certainly the
Yeah.
vascular work. And the other thing about transplant is in my NHS practice, I do something called a pelvic dissection where we take out lymph nodes from the pelvis. And actually, that was when you're putting in a kidney, that's exactly where the kidney's going. So that was probably my first steps into knowing that kind of anatomy. The other thing that was brilliant about Bristol was their anatomy lab is incredible. They have
Yeah.
a very good teacher who we were incredibly lucky to have teaching with, called
Mm.
Alice Roberts. And she's a very inspiring lady. Obviously still has quite a lot of things on the TV, but learning the
Yeah.
anatomy from her was amazing. And then what did I do? Finished that, did another year in plastics just to try and make sure that it's something I definitely wanted to do.
Was that in
Uh,
Bristol?
that was still in Bristol. Yeah.
Yeah.
Applied for a job, and then I got something called a LAT, which is where you get a standalone training job. And this was back in the day that there was sort of, I say a handful, but there were anywhere from about 10 to 15 jobs
Yeah, there
nationally.
weren't many. Yeah.
There weren't many, so I got the job in Exeter, lovely part of the country.
Yeah.
Difficult to settle, I guess, because we didn't know that we were going to be there for very long.
No. How
But
long were we there for in
a
the
year
end?
and a half.
All right.
But I was there, and then I got my number up in plastics. But Royal Devon and Exeter is just one of those places that just has some absolute legends in plastic surgery. It's some incredible people, and it's one of those units that doesn't shout loud about it, but just gets on and does some amazing work. So some of the seniors were like John Palmer and Peter Saxby. And then and I've said it on Instagram before, and I think it probably upset people, but who inspired me to do the melanoma that I do? But that was a chap called Chris Stone, who's a
Yes.
lovely guy down there. He kind of just seemed to get it all right. Not lovely man. Had his own textbooks, did medical law, had a lovely family, and just a genuinely nice person. So maybe it wasn't sure that I want to do melanoma. I just wanted to be him. Who listens to this podcast is
No,
fine.
he won't. Let's hope not.
But
Gosh.
just a just genuinely nice person. And then they really helped me, get through the interview, and then
Yeah,
I
they
got
were
my
really nice.
number.
I think what was nice about that unit was they were like a real family, and just
Yes.
everybody was very welcoming, and not only to you but also to me, and it was just felt like a nice place. They all loved living there. It was like a nice place to live, and like I just felt it was a good unit for you to train in and learn in. I think I would have been happy to stay there, but
Yeah.
then you got
It's
a
just in the,
number.
but it's just in the it's just in the middle of nowhere. But then yes, then I got a number. So which is where you get into a national scheme. So it's nationally appointed, and reverse go back up to Yorkshire again. So back up to Yorkshire we go, and then settle
And
down,
I think
just
you
on the
got that.
outskirts of Leeds.
Yeah, so you got that number, and I remember you had to just for people that don't know, you have to just list everywhere and hope that you get somewhere. Obviously, depending on how well you do in the interview. And I remember you got Yorkshire, and I think I cried probably for about 2 days.
Yeah.
Probably more than that, actually. I think.
Yeah, I didn't, because it
No,
was
I
one of
did.
my
I
high
did.
choices. But
Yeah, I think I was like, I'm from down south. I'm definitely not from up north, and I'm not going. And I remember all my friends saying to me, "You just need to say you're not going." And I said, "I can't. We have to go." And so we left and we went, didn't we? With one baby and another baby on the way. We went to Yorkshire, and we're still here now. So tell us about your experience in Yorkshire. What did you do when you got here?
yeah. So obviously started off, worked in Pinderfields. I think I did 10 days of work and then went off on paternity leave. So it probably wasn't the best way to start a job.
No, no.
So I was off for 2 weeks. And then I worked in Pinderfields, which is the not national, sorry, the regional burn centre for us. So lots of burns. They do breast reconstruction in the hands, but kind of it was the starting off the rung. Doing lots of publications and bits and pieces like that. And then I went to Bradford,
Yeah.
and worked with Nick Rhodes, who I now work with privately. And so met Nick, and Bradford at the time was a great unit. doing fantastic stuff. When did I go to next? Hull,
Yeah.
which, to be fair, is very much like the Exeter of the world.
Yeah,
Lovely,
I
lovely
agree with you
unit.
there.
Really, really nice people.
Yeah,
Um,
they were very nice, very welcoming. I
yeah,
liked them. Yeah,
yeah. And so I did more melanoma there, and I did head and neck as well. So I worked with Paolo Matucci, who's an incredible surgeon, and Paul Stanley, who sadly passed away a few years ago. But learned a lot of melanoma and head and neck from him, and also anatomy. Yeah, he was an incredible anatomy teacher.
yeah.
And so used to go to the labs and teach the students. I think it was on a Tuesday, which was great.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was good. But there's some amazing people in Hull, and a lovely, lovely unit, really nice. And then I went to Leeds, and probably been in Leeds now for about 6 years. I guess we're at six, so 6 years. And was
Isn't that long? Oh,
there as a
gosh.
registrar for about a year. Then I did fellowships. So I did melanoma fellowship and worked with Mr. Dewar and Mr. Peach. And then I did a lower limb and sarcoma fellowship with Ian Smith. And really at that point just decided that Leeds is the kind of place that I wanted to work. Massive centre, tertiary referral centre. So we take from, all over the region. In fact, a few of my colleagues take people from across the country. And we look after lots of different aspects of plastic surgery. So a busy unit, very, very fun.
Yeah, it is very busy, isn't it? So that brings me on to my next question. What do you actually do in the NHS? What's your day-to-day job?
So most of my work is looking after patients with skin cancer. And so that's patients with melanoma and non-melanoma. And we kind of categorize them because they usually tend to have different risks in different types of surgery.
Which we will, I think we need to go into that in another podcast because I
That's
know you
fine.
love that topic.
That's fine.
But that is like a whole other hour. So just
but
briefly
but
go on
but it,
about that.
it's the kind of thing that affects the whole body. So it's surgery that needs reconstruction for the head and neck, body, anywhere really. And then I do things like lymph node dissections for the bigger cancers, and then I do some other work, some perineal reconstruction, so for the bowel surgeons. But really, anything can come in during our on call. So we look after lower limb trauma and hand trauma and brachial plexus injuries and pediatric vascular surgery and all those kind of things. But fundamentally, work with an incredible bunch of people so that we all work together. And sometimes there's some things that I can do and some things that I can't do. So there's always people around to help each other out. So it's a very I say the word collaborative, but anyone that works in Leeds will probably smile because that's one of our buzzwords. But yeah, it's it's a nice environment to work with, and I'm very fortunate that a lot of the people I work with in the NHS I also get to work with in the private sector.
So what kind of things do you do when you're on call? Can you just explain? Because I think people just think plastics. I mean, our children think you take out pieces of Lego from their body, from people's bodies. They don't, what do people really, what do they think plastics is? Can you explain it?
Yes, plastic comes from the plastikos, which is to mold or form. So it's really about reconstruction in most circumstances. I'm sure you'd love it, but we could give you a 2-hour lecture if you wanted of how plastic surgery came about. But a
No.
lot of what we do is about reconstruction and trying to work out ways of solving issues. So we're often the last line of defense. If someone needs a breast reconstruction or things like cleft and lips and palates
Yeah.
can be done by plastics. If there's a wound to cover, so that could be lower legs, hands. Bizarrely, we do hand fractures and tendons and nerves and bits and pieces like that. As I said on our on call, rarely, but we get things in like babies and children that lose the blood supply to a limb, from nasty fractures and bits and pieces like that. So there can be some of the surgical emergencies. And then things like nasty infections, abscesses, something called necrotizing fasciitis, which is a skin-eating bug, which usually involves debridement and therefore reconstruction from us afterwards. But it's incredibly broad, and technically speaking, as I said, we could be seeing a neonate with a spina bifida in the morning and then operating on a 100-year-old in the afternoon. But I would
Yeah.
say is that we're very lucky. We're very passionate about teaching in Leeds, and we've got some fantastic. I don't like to use the word juniors because I think it's very demeaning nowadays, but we've got some fantastic colleagues that work underneath us that look
I
after a
think
lot of it.
committed is committed not the word.
Well, they are committed, yeah, but I mean
Yeah,
the
they're
term
just
junior
really
doctor
good.
nowadays, but they're just, yeah, they are, and they look after the absolute bulk of the on-call work. So it not only means that we can maintain our elective work, but it also means that if there's anything that they need us for, we're available for. And that sounds like a bit of a cop out, I guess, but actually they are,
Well,
really nice bunch, and we support each other.
and also, yeah, and I think that you support them by teaching them.
Well,
When
I hope
you
so.
were,
Yeah, I hope so because there's certain things that the trainees need the whole way through, and certainly from my skin cancer work, it's one of these prerequisites that you need to. So, we often have trainees in with us learning how to do things like dissections, which involves anatomy in the armpit and groin, and yeah, it's
yeah, you're
great.
constantly teaching. I think without realizing you're doing it. I think
Yeah,
they learn a lot from you.
they learn much more at work than they do from at home.
Yeah, from just looking at a textbook, definitely from doing it in real life, definitely. So, where have I got? I'm just looking at my questions. I think we covered sort of the NHS. I mean, we could go on like for a long time about the NHS and what you actually do because it just goes on and on and on. But I wanted to talk now about what you do in your your private practice. What kind of things do you cover in that?
Yes, I've been. Work at Coppergate Clinic as my private practice. As I mentioned earlier, on that clinic's owned by Nick Rhodes, who I met in Bradford, and Nick was one of not many people who asked me to come along to the private sector very early on, and then in fact paid me to help him, which was actually one of those very small gestures that meant an incredible amount for me. So as soon as I knew Nick had a clinic, it was certainly the kind of place that I wanted to work in. What do I do? Well, I've been working there for 3 and a bit years, but obviously we've had the COVID pandemic, so that affected things. The bulk of my work is looking after things like blepharoplasties. So upper lid blepharoplasty by far is the most popular procedure that we see in Coppergate Clinic. It's a day case
Um,
local anaesthetic procedure.
we'll
What were you
talk
saying?
about that in another
I
episode.
know, but I'm just saying what it is and why it's probably so
Yeah,
popular
okay, do
is
that bit. Yeah.
that it's a relatively simple procedure with relatively low downtime. So it's the bulk of our work just because it's such a popular procedure.
And
Then
I think
these,
it makes such a difference to people.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And then
Like,
other things, things like
um,
pinning back ears, and then breast work. So breast implants, mastopexy, which is a lift, and then that can be combined with implants as well. Breast reduction, arm lift, tummy tucks, liposuction. We've got Vaser, which is a lovely way of taking off fat. We've also got Renuvion as well, which is a skin tightening procedure. And then things like thigh lifts as well. And then some of the more simple, we get patients coming along with skin tags and skin lesions and things like that. That's some of the things that I do.
I think we ought to go into detail about each of those things in a separate podcast. But I think that kind of gives a sum up now of what you kind of do. If people want to kind of find you and look you up, do you have a website?
I do have a website. Yeah, so I've got a website which has got links through to my social media. So I've got Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and have I got X? I don't know. I
No, I
think I
don't
haven't.
think you've got
No,
that.
I don't think
I
I
think
have.
you were on that. No, I don't think you are on
Yeah,
that. We could
TikTok.
do that though.
Yeah,
Bit, not really, but
a,
yeah.
a bit of TikTok. No dancing yet, but I do have some
No,
TikTok. But probably
no
the
dance.
easiest way is through Instagram. And
Yes.
then because I work in Coppergate, obviously you can find all the details on my website. But if not, if you go to the Coppergate Instagram or the Coppergate website, then you can work out who I am, what I do, and how to make a consultation in that clinic.
So if people want to book to see you in Coppergate, they have to phone up reception or email reception and book
Yeah.
to have an appointment.
Yeah, so we don't have an online booking. We do it via telephone. But actually, the reason we do that is because our reception staff are very good, and often patients are wanting a specific thing or to see a specific person. So actually, they're there to try and guide people into
Yeah, they're very
who the
good.
best person is for them. So they're great. So that's why we've never really adopted a proper online booking service because we find
No,
the
I think
telephone
it's good that
service
you
works very
don't.
well. Yeah, I
It's
think
very
it's great.
personal.
And then the other thing to say is, like on the topic, is we get a lot of people coming through on email and Instagram and stuff, and they either don't need surgery or it's not appropriate for them,
Yeah,
or there's another thing that they could have done. So you don't kind of want to sift out those patients because you don't want them wasting their time and spending money on a consultation when they could be directed into another place. And certainly the reception staff in Coppergate are great at helping with that.
and so people can have it online or come in person, depending on what it is, or the initial
Yeah,
one.
yeah. So we started doing the virtual just off the back of COVID, really, because that's kind of the way that
Yeah,
we were. But obviously, there is a limit to what you can do virtually. Realistically, I tend to use Zoom if I'm going to, and I like Zoom because you can draw pictures and things. But really, it's great for upper lid blepharoplasties and skin lesions, and then really that's it.
yeah,
But lower lids, I find quite challenging to look, and to be honest, it's important to examine. But we
yeah,
do the virtual consultations, yeah, or the face to face, with the proviso that even with a virtual consultation, if someone gets there on the day and they're not an appropriate candidate or it's not right for them, then when we would cancel them. But
yeah.
yeah, it's usually to make things slightly easier for patients rather than anything else.
Yeah, no, that's good. So they can find you on the Coppergate website, on your website, on all your social media, which is what is your Instagram? It's Plastic Surgery, Mr. James Smith. The website is. I'll put a link below, shall I?
jsmithplasticsurgery.com.
Yeah, I think it is that. Yeah, we should
I've
know.
probably got a MySpace.
No, there isn't such a thing, is there?
I don't
That's
know.
gone. No, no, you've not got that. You are on Facebook though. You have got that, and then yeah, Instagram mainly. Anyway, thank you very much. I think we need to come back and do a whole talk on melanoma. That was a big
Yes.
topic. On all your things that you do in plastics in the private sector. I think definitely we need to talk about blepharoplasties, and boobs and tummies and everything, because I think there's so much to go into. So I think we're going to have to come back a different time to talk about that. I was
Okay.
going to say, is that all right? But it's not all right because I'm going to make you do it. So, okay. Thank you very much. You can
Absolute
go
pleasure.
now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.